Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from Frontier. I'm dressed like this because I'm off to Durban. I can hear everyone cheering, and I thought to myself, Mrs. Davis, who was my English teacher when I was 12, called me verbose, and you're probably thinking the same. But anyway, you're kindly excused because I'm away tomorrow and on Monday. Looking forward to attending a wedding in Durban, first time I'm visiting, so I'm looking forward to that as well. We've uploaded the investor briefing from Yuri, which is short for Georgi Geisel, who's the group finance director of East African Breweries. That was the full year results and his particular presentation. Of course, they're the biggest distributor of alcoholic drinks, and Tusker is their flagship beer, but they're in Tanzania and Uganda. Tanzania did very well. Kenya was up 1%, which is not bad when you consider what occurred last year. 2 elections, a drought, a credit crunch. Macro thoughts. Markets see 2 more hikes this year, pricing in 100% probability for a September rate hike and about 2/3 for December. And I think that's a given. Look at this, Chinese equities down a massive 3.3% today. And as I said, President Trump is making Xi, who looked unstoppable, very brittle. And in July, recently, I was saying, I think POTUS has taken Xi down a few notches in what is a game of chicken. I was referencing the Chicky run in Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean, when they drive and the person who jumps out first loses, has opened Xi's eyes to the downside risk, which might just look a little precipitous and of a fat-tail nature. China rout continues as Trump seeks to maintain its strong negotiating position. US considers imposing a 25% tariff rate on incremental $200 billion worth of China imports. And just reiterating what I said last month from a trading perspective, the fire starter, referencing Trump and that song, the Chicky Run specialist, is actually beginning to shake Xi a little. And I also wrote about the tariff wars, and I asked who blinks first. And the method in his madness is the triangulation of China and a serious ratcheting higher of pressure. And this is like a Kissinger flipped. Home thoughts, one of the beautiful, huge bull elephants we encountered in Ruaha. Ruaha National Park is in Tanzania. There's a fantastic documentary about a pride of lions, or 3 prides if I'm not mistaken, in that national park. Really remarkable camera work, etc. This huge bull elephant encountered in Ruaha, known in the area known as Small Serengeti, he cut his way through the long meadow grasses laden with delicate purple blooms, his testosterone-fueled aroma drifting towards us ahead of his arrival. You remember I described once a similar situation in Lewa. We came round the corner in a forest, and he was right in front of us, and I put up that photo a few times. I like this, the killy eye, just amazing. This was from Precision Air, so it flew over Kilimanjaro. 2 photographs, and it really is a great photograph. The killy eye is just amazing, maneuvering by a very highly skilled pilot indeed. Exactly. Political reflections, presidential results are expected to be released by lunchtime. This is Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission's results showed Mnangagwa ZANU-PF cruising to a big majority, 109 seats versus 41 at the last count I saw. This is a photograph of the streets of Harare yesterday evening. Contrast that with the streets of Harare last year when you had the 2 children walking in front of the tank. And here you have a much more intrusive, coercive presence by the army. And this is something I spoke about when I was looking at Zimbabwe last year in November. I said the military which launched this Mugabe decapitation are certainly set to shape the outcome. The tanks were on the street, but I think now have a tiger by the tail. Interesting point made by PolSec analyst. A key consideration amid what is unfolding in Harare is whether the Zimbabwean military is acting in accordance or against the wishes of President Emerson Mnangagwa. Not sure which outcome of the two outcomes is more troubling. This was the photograph that flashed around the world in 2017 at the time of the army intervention. It's a tank, 2 children walking in front of it. Soldiers fired live rounds at Zimbabwe election protests, everyone claiming victory, harsh crackdown, election chaos. That's the AFB Africa lead Fran Blanding. Longer it takes the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to release presidential election, the more credibility is lost. EU chief observer. Sky's Africa correspondent in Harare. People are so angry they can barely speak. As I said, the military which launched this Mugabe decapitation are certainly set to shape the outcome, but now have a tiger by the tail. John Mahama, who's the chief observer of the Commonwealth Secretariat Group, said there will be a winner and there will be a loser. But Zimbabwe as a country will be the overall winner if everybody plays their part well, he said. Whoever wins must be magnanimous in victory, and whoever loses must be gracious in defeat. And at Mindspeak, he made this comment, which I thought was tremendous, and there's a link to it. Leave when the applause is the loudest. Again, the title of my piece last year in November was The Genie is Out of the Bottle. Now look at this, I have an interesting one here. Chiretsi North has 30,688 registered voters, and the numbers of people who voted are 37,819. Question is that's nearly 20% just on the number. So has there been massive ballot stuffing? Deadly riots rock Zimbabwe's capital as vote results delayed. Furthermore, so look, we've got a very dynamic and fluid situation. It's just very difficult to tell what's exactly happened in the nature of these elections in Africa. It's not that transparent, but we've clearly got a fluid situation. I don't think Mnangagwa could have won this election outright at the presidential level, but I'm sure they're going to declare him the winner. Trying to persuade the 17th century Inquisition that the earth rotates around the sun. You know, when you've got the other side on the run, they take refuge in abuse, trying to get people to grasp that there is merit in the WTO Brexit option. It's like trying to persuade the 17th century Inquisition that the earth rotates around the sun. This is a terrible situation, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions should stop this rigged witch hunt right now before it continues to stain our country any further. And then I saw this tweet, you can taste the panic. Looking back on history, who was treated worse? Alphonse Capone, legendary mob boss, killer and public enemy number 1, or Paul Manafort, political operative and Reagan Dole darling, now serving solitary confinement, although convicted of nothing? Where is the Russian collusion? Japanese bond market finally getting interesting, tweets Reuters' Jamie. 10-year yield, biggest one-day fall for 2 years yesterday, and biggest one-day rise for 2 years today. That was yesterday. JGB futures volume is seen in this from Sun Chartist. And that takes me back to mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice. And she said, we are all just prisoners here of our own device. Last thing I remember, I was running for the door. I had to find the passage back to the place I was before. Relax at the Nightman, we are programmed to receive. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. What is clear, I said then, is that we're at the fag end of the Labourist Party. It took a long time, and faggots typically do. And then from the same song, and in the master's chambers they gathered for the feast. They stab it with their steely knives, but they just can't kill the beast. Donald Trump's losing fight against Obamacare comes to mind. Currency market, let's have a look at what's going on here. Plenty. Euro dollar 116.31. Dollar index 94.74, Japanese yen 111.65, Swiss franc 0.9928, the pound 130.80, the Australian dollar 0.7380, India rupee 68.355. They bumped up interest rates a quarter point. South Korean won 11.2421, Brazilian real 374.91, Egyptian pound 17.8330. South African rand, which had gone right up to the top of the range, is now backing up again, 13.2585. Wonder what's going on outside the office. Dollar index, this is a 3-month chart, we're still in this 94-96 range. A few of the commentators I follow seem to be expecting a breakdown below 94, but I think you can try and sell the break if that happens, as opposed to trading for it right now. Just keep an eye on 94 to 96. But if this tariff war heats up, then I think we're going to continue to see dollar strength. Euro dollar 116.33. 115.15 remains key. This is a chart from about 36 hours ago from Chigal, but she was sort of predicting this fall. Presently qualifies as a 5-pointer. What a 5-pointer is, I don't know, but Peter always provides excellent charts. This is Bitcoin last time at 7,675, back below 8,000. Apple shares hit $200, biggest rise since February 2017, and just shy of $1 trillion market cap. Go back to that advert from 1997, Think Different, still remains. One of my favorites, Tesla shares, shot up 10% after hours. They only burned through $739 million in the second quarter versus an expected burn of $900 million. For a company that has burned $1 billion a quarter of late, this was a pleasant surprise. Bloomberg is asking, is this a turning point for Elon Musk, whose unputdownable Twitter feed? Only time will tell. But in our view, today's results were clearly a step in the right direction, he wrote in a report to clients. A few years from now, investors may conclude that second quarter 2018 was the quarter in which Tesla cemented its position as a truly formidable player in the global automotive market. Interesting. Silver and gold forming possible bear pennants in their dive into the dredges, says Peter L. Brent again. I know, it's all part of manipulation by the COMEX to drive prices lower so that whales can scoop up cheap metal. He's been sarcastic, obviously. Crude oil, last trading at $67.10. This could wobble, I think. It's been very, very resilient for a while on the increasing jaw between Trump, Rouhani, and Khamenei. Though I saw that Trump is now suggesting a summit or a meeting. Turkish lira fell beyond 5 per dollar for the first time in history on sanctions news. Go and listen to Vice President Pence, who's taking a hard evangelical line on this matter. India's central bank raised policy rate to 6.5% from 6.25%. Saudi Arabia planned to invade Qatar last summer. Rex Tillerson's efforts to stop it may have cost him his job, says The Intercept. 13 hours before Secretary of State Tillerson learned from the presidential Twitter feed that he was being fired, he did something that President Trump had been unwilling to do. Following a phone call with his British counterpart, Tillerson condemned a deadly nerve agent attack in the UK, saying that he had full confidence in the UK's investigation and its assessment that Russia was likely responsible. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders had called the attack reckless, indiscriminate and irresponsible, but stopped short of blaming Russia, leading numerous media outlets to speculate that Tillerson was fired for criticizing Russia. In the months that followed his departure, press reports strongly suggested that the country's lobbying hardest for Tillerson's removal was Saudi Arabia and the UAE, both of which were frustrated by Tillerson's attempts to mediate and end their blockade of Qatar. One report in the New York Times even suggested that the UAE ambassador to Washington knew that Tillerson would be forced out 3 months before he was fired in March. In the summer of 2017, several months before the Gulf allies started to push for his ouster, Tillerson intervened to stop a secret Saudi-led, UAE-backed plan to invade and essentially conquer Qatar. According to one current member of the US intelligence community and 2 former State Department officials, all of whom declined to be named, citing the sensitivity of the matter. Tillerson's intervention enraged Mohammed bin Zayed, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, an effective ruler of that country, according to US intelligence officials and a source close to the Emirati royal family, who declined to be identified, citing concerns about his safety. It's unsustainable, said Bruce Riedel, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute and 30-year CIA office, in a lecture last November. In the 3 years since King Salman ascended to the throne, 1/3 of Saudi Arabia's reserves have already been spent. You don't need to have an MBA from the Wharton School to figure out what that means 6 years from now. If the Saudis had succeeded in seizing Doha, they would potentially have been able to gain access to the country's $320 billion sovereign wealth fund. I wrote about that in June 2017 when I said okay, and I was imagining myself as being a Saudi or UAE, and I said we can always do it by force, because this looks like a mugging in a dark alley now. Rolling over Qatar was the article. Take a look. Qatar stocks, however, made a breakthrough, recouping their losses from the trade and travel embargo imposed on the nation 14 months ago, back at unchanged. Have a look at the Qatar bond. It's bang in line with Saudi Arabia. It's quite ironic. Let's move on to Sub-Saharan Africa, DR Congo. Look at the crowd that received Jean-Pierre Bemba, who just a few weeks ago was about to spend 10 years in an ICC prison. But he's arrived back in Kinshasa. This is a photograph he posted. And it really is remarkable, and took me back to that quote by Virilio about the street. And if anyone's asserting ownership of the street, this photograph is doing exactly that because of its enormity. I don't think, if it's a question Trump versus Bemba, for example. Ethiopia reform push faces major snag, red tape. Businessmen who have to deal with Ethiopia's customs system like to joke that if you get a permit to import yellow paintbrushes, make sure every last one is yellow. Good article. South African all share minus 3.54% year to date. South African yields are about to head a lot higher, positioning for a ZAR fall. I tend to agree with Pinecone Macro. Dollar versus Rand, 13.2585. I think we back up from here. Dollar rallies. Egyptian government debt service climbs to 108% of GDP, according to Al Aram Online. Nigerian all shares down 4.26% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange up 10.63% year to date. Kenol Kobil reported first half earnings, profit after tax up 16.06%. First half sales surged 24.16% to 90.192351 billion shillings. Gross profit declined to 3.61 billion from 4.066 billion. Other income largely in line, 278.874 million. Admin costs were down a whopping 46%. But I think that was also because they were lapping a one-off provision they made in the previous first half. So that once you strip that out, that's largely explaining the situation. EBITDA was at 3.022 billion from 2.654 billion last time. Profit before tax up 14.085% to 2.37 billion. Profit after tax up 16.06% to 1.65 billion. They issued some shares, so it's a diluted EPS, but that's up 16.39%. Net increase in cash and cash equivalents was 1.124 billion. They've hiked the interim dividend by 20%. They're talking of volume growth of 8%. These were muscular results. The interim dividend hike of 20% sums up the muscle, as it were. They were lapping a one-off provision, but once again, one cannot argue with these results, which has now been a trend for a while. Execution has really been immaculate by David Ohana. Have a listen. I did an interview with him after the full year results to get a flavour of the man. Nairobi All Shares down 0.74% this year. Nairobi NSE 20 is down 10.97%. The Business Daily is reporting about a volume collapse, which is quite correct. Not helped by the Robinhood tax in terms of the bond market, which you will reflect on. There was major undersubscription in the T-bills. That's because no one wants to pay up 5 basis points. In and another 5 on the way out. Carrefour sales up 143% in the first 6 months. But obviously they've opened up more outlets. I was born at a very young age, says my governor of Kiambu, Ferdinand Waititu. I think I know exactly where he took that photograph. Quite extraordinary. KWS is on the verge of collapse as the audit firm PwC, in a new report. The Auditor General report for the year ending June 2016 declared KWS insolvent with a 5.8 billion shilling deficit. The report also showed that the service had not remitted 1.45 billion as staff contribution to the NSSF. This means that the continued sustainability of KWS is dependent on regular government support, development partners and creditors. Due to financial challenges, the board, without seeking necessary statutory approvals from Treasury, had diverted endowment funds and compensation for land hived off from national parks for construction of SGR and Southern Bypass to meet operational obligations. Our colleagues were sacrificial lambs in the rhino death saga. This is the vets have given the tourism CS Najib Bilala 7 days to reinstate their colleagues who were suspended following the death of 10 rhinos. What a tragedy. So I'm off and wish you a great long weekend and see you on Tuesday. Thanks again for stopping by.